While everyone was watching crypto prices bleed last week, something happened quietly inside the Federal Reserve's payment infrastructure that the mainstream financial press barely acknowledged. A crypto company just plugged directly into the core of America's money system. Not through a bank, not through a middleman, directly. And if you understand what that means, truly understand it, you realize that the door that just cracked open for Kraken is the same door that Ripple has been standing in front of for years. Today, we pull back the curtain on what a Fed master account actually does, why Ripple is almost certainly next, and why the math on XRP changes completely once that approval lands. Let's get into it. Welcome back. I'm not here to hype you up. I'm here to make sure you understand what's actually happening beneath the surface. Because the signal is loud right now, and it's only visible to those who are actually looking. Let me start with the hard truth. Most people who saw the Kraken headline read it and moved on. Crypto company gets Fed account. Cool. That is the single most expensive misunderstanding happening in this space right now. So let's fix it. Here's what most people don't know. The Federal Reserve's payment infrastructure, FedWire, FedNow, the National Settlement Service, these are the actual rails that move trillions of dollars every single day. Every commercial bank in America has a master account with the Fed. That master account is what allows them to settle transactions in real time in US dollars with finality. Without it, you are always dependent on someone else. You are always the third party. You are always waiting for permission. Now, for years, crypto companies have been in that position. Even a company like Ripple, with 75 licenses across 60-plus markets, processing cross-border payments at scale, valued at $50 billion, even they have had to route through banking partners to touch the Fed's core settlement rails. They sit on the outside of the wall, looking in. What Kraken just did is crack that wall. They obtained what's called a skinny master account. And I want to be precise here because the details matter. This is not a full master account. A full master account gives you everything: interest on your reserve balances, access to the discount window for emergency lending, correspondent banking capabilities where you can settle payments on behalf of other institutions. The skinny version strips all of that out. No interest, no discount window, no overdrafts. If your balance hits zero, payments are auto-rejected. And crucially, you can only use it to settle your own funds. So, why does this matter so much if it's so limited? Because it establishes the legal and regulatory precedent that a non-bank, digital asset institution can be evaluated for safety and soundness by the Fed and approved for direct access to core payment rails. That precedent did not exist before this week. The Biden-era Fed refused to even engage with these applications. That refusal is now officially over. Ripple filed their own application for a Fed master account earlier in 2025. And according to analysis from Crypto and Market Coverage, they applied with the understanding that the skinny account framework could be the exact pathway used for firms in their position. Ripple isn't waiting for the full version. They want a foot in the door, same as Kraken just got. And when Ripple combines a Fed master account with their pending OCC bank charter, you are no longer talking about a payments company that works alongside banks. You are talking about an institution that sits beside them, connected directly to the same infrastructure. That's the foundation that everyone missed in last week's news cycle. Now let's talk about why this matters for XRP specifically. Because I hear the question all the time, why does XRP need to be expensive? Why can't it stay at $2 and still do its job? Let me show you the math that the crowd consistently ignores. Cross-border payments globally move approximately $150 trillion annually. The daily Forex market turns over $7.5 trillion every single day. The Nostro and Vostro accounts that banks currently use to pre-fund international transactions have roughly $27 trillion locked inside them at any given moment, sitting idle, earning nothing, waiting to be used as liquidity buffers. That is dead capital. That is the inefficiency that XRP was architected to eliminate. Here's the mechanism. For XRP to act as a true bridge currency between two fiat systems, say, a Japanese bank sending yen that arrives as dollars in New York in under 5 seconds, the network needs enough XRP liquidity at the moment of the transaction to absorb the full value of the payment. This is called the on-demand liquidity model. Now, run the numbers. If you want to move $1 million through the ODL corridor and XRP is priced at $2, you need 500,000 XRP tokens to execute that single transaction. But if XRP is priced at $20, you only need 50,000 tokens. At $200, you need 5,000. The higher the price, the less XRP is consumed per transaction, the more efficient the liquidity pool becomes, and the more throughput the system can handle without slippage. This isn't a prediction. It is a design requirement. The system is literally more efficient at higher price levels. And here's the supply side of that equation. Total XRP supply is fixed at 100 billion. Circulating supply is approximately 55 to 57 billion. Exchange reserves, the XRP actually available to buy on the open market, have been declining. When institutional custody solutions start absorbing tokens into cold storage and multi-sig vaults at scale, that supply does not come back. Not for a 10% gain, not for 50%. Institutions don't move for pocket change. And then, layer on top of that the ETF dynamic. The Bitwise XRP ETF just became the largest XRP ETF in America. $10 million in inflows in a single week. Franklin Templeton is in this space. Canary ETF up 8% in a single session. The Grayscale XRP product is live. Every dollar that flows into a spot XRP ETF removes tokens from open market circulation permanently until redemption. That is a structural supply drain happening in real time. The math doesn't lie, and the system is almost built. Let me show you what smart money actually does versus what retail investors think smart money does. Retail investors look at macro uncertainty, tariffs, Middle East tensions, interest rate noise, and they sell, or they freeze. They wait for the all clear. And I understand that. The headlines are designed to create that response. But while the crowd has been staring at red candles, here's what's actually been happening in the background. Bitwise, a serious institutional-grade asset manager, launched an XRP ETF in November and has already claimed the top spot in the U.S. market. That doesn't happen by accident. That's the result of months of regulatory prep, legal review, and institutional client demand. These firms do not move without absolute certainty about the regulatory environment they're entering. Then look at C-Link Finance. They built a trade finance platform that runs natively on the XRP ledger, designed for the maritime industry, a sector that moves $2 trillion in trade annually. They have direct alignment with Lloyd's of London. Their system handles voyage creation, invoice generation, and settlement happens in RLUSD. Think about that. This is not a white paper. This is production infrastructure, live on the XRP ledger, settling real trade finance transactions in Ripple's stablecoin. And then TCS, Tata Consultancy Services, one of the largest technology companies in the world, has explicitly named Ripple as an entity that can redeploy their Quartz gateway to scale participation in blockchain-based trade ecosystems. They're applying the same on-chain instant settlement capabilities that are disrupting the North American trucking industry, a $3 trillion market, and expanding it to maritime, rail, and air, powered by XRP infrastructure. Ask yourself this: does a company the size of TCS, with global government contracts, enterprise relationships with central banks and sovereign wealth funds, does a company like that put Ripple in their architecture documentation on a hunch? Absolutely not. They position based on due diligence. They build based on certainty. And they named Ripple explicitly. The signal is clear. It's only invisible if you're not looking. Here's where the convergence gets interesting, Because this isn't about one event anymore. This is about multiple catalysts stacking on top of each other in the same short window. First, the Genius Act and the Clarity Act. President Trump posted this week directly to Congress demanding these bills move immediately. He didn't suggest it, he demanded it. He explicitly called out banks for attempting to hold the Clarity Act hostage and threatened consequences. And then, within hours of that post, Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong's delegation was at the White House. Whether or not Armstrong met with Trump directly, the message is unmistakable. The executive branch is applying pressure. The legislative clock is running. Second, Ripple's OCC bank charter application is pending. If that lands alongside a Fed master account approval, Ripple is no longer a fintech company. They are a regulated financial institution with direct access to U.S. payment infrastructure. The entire landscape of how they can operate, partner, and scale changes overnight. Third, ETF expansion. The infrastructure for institutional access to XRP is already live. The products exist, the custody solutions exist. What happens to inflows when full regulatory clarity drops, and the risk premium that institutional compliance officers have been pricing in simply disappears? When the Clarity Act passes, the wait-and-see money becomes all-in money. That is not a speculation. That is how institutional capital allocation works. The gates open, and the capital that has been waiting outside floods in. We are inside that window right now. We are moving from an era of abundance to an era of scarcity in this market, and most people aren't going to realize it until it's already happened. Here's the dynamic to understand. Right now, retail investors still have access to XRP at prices where you can accumulate meaningful positions. But every day that ETF inflows increase, every day that institutional custody solutions absorb supply, every day that ODL corridors expand and more XRP is locked in liquidity pools, the float gets tighter. The available supply in the open market shrinks. When regulatory clarity lands, the risk premium vanishes. And when the risk premium vanishes, institutional allocators who have been sitting on the sidelines don't trickle in. They move in size all at once. The price doesn't drift up, it gaps. And once it gaps, the retail window to accumulate at these levels is gone, not temporarily, permanently. The institution spent years trying to shake weak hands loose from this asset. Every piece of FUD, every regulatory uncertainty headline, every debanking story, it was all noise designed to shake you out so they could take your position. The question isn't whether this plays out. The question is whether you're still holding when it does. I know what some of you are feeling right now. You've been holding through cycles. You've watched prices run and retrace. You've explained XRP to people at dinner and gotten blank stares. And there are moments where it genuinely feels like being early and being wrong are the same thing. I want to address that directly. Being early in a technological infrastructure shift has always felt exactly like this. The TCP/IP protocol that the entire internet runs on was invented in 1974. It took 2 decades before it became commercially viable. Swift, the messaging system that XRP is being architected to replace, took nearly 15 years to reach mainstream adoption after launch. Infrastructure takes time, but when it reaches the tipping point, the adoption curve is not linear. We are watching Ripple sign partnerships across 60 markets, process payments at institutional scale, obtain 75+ regulatory licenses, build out a stablecoin with real settlement utility, and now, potentially, gain direct access to the Federal Reserve's core payment rails. That is not a company that is struggling. That is a company that is building the scaffolding for the next financial system, while the old one still thinks it's in charge. The red candles are noise. The macro headlines are noise. What I just walked you through, that is the signal. Here's the summary for those who made it this far, and if you're here, you're not the crowd. The Fed just established the legal precedent for crypto institutions to access core payment infrastructure directly. Ripple is queued up behind Kraken. The Clarity Act is being pushed at the executive level with force. Trade finance on the XRP ledger is live and scaling. ETF inflows are accelerating. And the math on what XRP needs to be worth to do its job has never changed. Only the timeline to get there has compressed. Price is a distraction. Infrastructure is the reality. The system is almost complete. If you found value in today's breakdown, drop a comment below. Let me know which piece of this lands hardest for you. And if you want this level of analysis every day while the window is still open, you know what to do. Stay patient. Stay positioned. And as always, we don't wait for the future. We plan for it.